Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, April 17th Committee of the Whole continued meeting for budget deliberations. Tonight, as far as counselors present, all are present except for Counselor Baumgartner. We are going to begin with Human Services, account 1051 on page 141. And I believe Director Fondoulis is with us this evening. Counselor Parker.
I move the number $580,650.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Parker and seconded by Heed. Good evening. 141.
580,650.
580.
Is that on page 141?
On page 141, we're in account 1051, and Councilor Parker moved $580,650, and it was seconded by Councilor Heed. Hello. What would you like to tell us about your account?
Well, as you'll note on page 140, we're coming in at a fairly significant reduction, which came about because we did have a retirement. As of last Friday, actually, I had a long-standing counselor who retired. He's actually younger than I am, which leads you to wonder. But at any rate, she retired, and when she had first mentioned to me that she was planning to retire, I decided it was a good opportunity to think about perhaps reconfiguring the department to some extent. So the result has been that I wanted very much to fill that full-time position, but my solution was to eliminate the part-time position that I have in the department and shift the focus on this full-time position that would join the other full-time counselor I currently have, and that position would be basically 75% youth and family services responsibilities and 25% family support. The person who retired was full-time family support focused. But the reality is in the department that we need somebody more focused on youth and family services than we do on the family support. The 25% I left in for family support is going to be primarily focused on the groups that we run that are very successful and very important. The Grandparents Raising Grandchildren group, the Nurturing Families program, and also the Moms Craft group, which is really a support group for moms with young children. So I'm hoping that the person I find is going to be sort of a jack of all trades that will be experienced in counseling and also be able and interested in running groups, to say nothing of helping out in various other aspects of department programs. So that is the big change in the department planning. Everything else remains pretty much the same. I did reduce a little bit in operating expenses, but I'm very confident that with the 8 full-time staff that we'll end up with as a result of this budget, we'll have what we need to provide the services that we do in the department. So that's my the big news from this year, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there questions for Director Fondoulis? Counselor Zepari?
How many people do you serve in Grandparents Raising Grandchildren?
I believe the number has been hovering around 30 active participants.
In Groton? They're all Groton citizens?
Not necessarily. I think we've had a couple that were from outside of Groton. But
One couple.
Two participants that were from outside of Groton. Generally speaking, the majority are from Groton, but there are not many groups for grandparents raising grandparents that are as effective as ours, to be quite frank. And we even had one woman, I believe, I was told, that came from someplace in the New Haven area and drove up just to be with our group because it was so well thought of, so.
How prevalent is the problem of grandparents raising grandchildren in the country?
Increasingly
Do
prevalent.
you have any numbers, or?
I know, I don't have statistics, but I can say that it is to some extent tied into the situation with opiates and the consequences of people getting involved with substance abuse and not being able to raise their children, and therefore grandparents step up to the plate. So,
Do you know how many families are you assisting overall?
How many?
In your department?
I would imagine, and I do have sheets that have those statistics, which I can certainly pass out. On average, on a monthly basis, the social workers assist probably I would say 65 to 70 clients consistently on a monthly basis. Now,
That's all the social workers combined,
that's
not
just the
each.
social workers, yes. The youth and family counselors usually have, well, right now we have a part-time counselor and a full-time counselor. The full-time counselor has an average of anywhere from 7 to 15 cases a month. The part-time counselor usually doesn't go over probably 7 a month. It becomes a little difficult to schedule if you have more than that. So, but that's the position that I'm eliminating, the part-time counselor, and bringing in another full-time counselor if the budget is approved. And so that we'll have the capacity to see more people too.
Counselor Heed?
So you've got 3 social workers, 1 counselor. Is that right? Am I reading this correctly?
At the present time, at the present time, we have the one, we have 1.5 counselors right now. The part-time counselor is the position that I'm eliminating. But ultimately, what I'd like to see is 2 full-time counselors.
All right. And more like for conversational purposes, what are the kinds of counseling services that you provide?
Our counseling is limited to children and youth. We don't do adult counseling, never have. The counseling is short-term, meaning it's usually a maximum of 3 months. We occasionally make an exception if there's a need to extend maybe for another couple of weeks or so, but generally speaking, it's 3 months. We don't take cases that we know instinctively are going to be long-term. We would refer those out to other agencies that provide that kind of long-term counseling. Our short-term counseling, most of our referrals come from the schools. Usually they involve kids who are having trouble in school because of sometimes school-related issues, sometimes home-related issues, and they carry over into the school setting. And we take cases that we feel confident we can have success with over a 3-month period.
All right. And then, do they have insurance? Do we charge?
No.
Ask? No.
No. Youth service bureaus across the state are generally run by municipalities and generally do not charge. I don't think any charge for services. And that was the rationale in developing youth service bureaus in the beginning, was to provide a service to a community free of charge. And it does make a difference to many people that there is no charge attached.
Sure. Final question, and then I'll turn it over. What are some of the things that I know that we refer and partner with a lot of other agencies and a lot of other groups? What are some of the things you think that we're not doing that we should be doing, or?
I think we're doing just about everything we should be doing. Nothing comes to mind as something that we're not either ourselves equipped to handle or that we can't refer out and handle. A few years ago, I would have said a soup kitchen, but we're doing that now. Not we necessarily, the department as such, but we're providing, along with the faith community, Groton Community Meals. So, and I would not recommend that Groton get into the shelter business. I think that there are adequate shelters throughout the area, very good shelters. Not everyone who should take advantage of a shelter does, but many people do, fortunately. So.
All right, thank you.
Are there other questions for Director Fondulis?
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I'm fortunate to have very good staff. Very good staff.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will vote on account 1051, Human Services, in the amount of $580,650. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. We are now at 9 counselors.
Madam Mayor, if I could just add one other note. I wanted to be sure to mention this, that in keeping with the town's interest in reducing its, what do they call it, plastic footprint? I guess that's the term. We use plastic bags right now to give food out from our food locker. And we are looking into either using paper bags of some sort or some kind of recycled bag or maybe boxes. But I did want to mention that because I know it's on people's minds.
Yes, it is.
So
Thank
we're
you very
working to
much.
that extent, so I wanted to mention that.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so we are on to page 145, Human Services Assistance Trust. This is account 7320. Counselor Franco, please.
Make a motion for account 7320 in the amount of $10,000.
Second.
Moved by Franco and seconded by Parker. Director Fondulis.
Yes. We still have some money in that account. This is, as it's explained on page 144, this was an account, the Perkins Fund is what we are using presently, and that was the result of money that was bequeathed to the department. The fund balance is on page 147. It looks like the estimated fund balance at in June of this year will be $45,000, and with the amount that we're asking to be appropriated, the fund balance will be $38,864 as of June of 2020. At the present time, we are taking, I think it's $3,000 for the child abuse prevention initiative that we do, but fortunately, we are still receiving some state grant monies and also a donation from the Groton Education Association towards that initiative, so that we are not necessarily having to dip into this. So we may not actually spend that, at least certainly not all of that $3,000 that is budgeted for that initiative. So, and we're trying, as we did with the Spicer Fund previously, we're trying very hard to monitor expenses, and we also limit the amount that we give to an individual client, just because we need to stretch it as far as we can to as many people that are in need. So, so that's where things stand with that.
Any questions on the Human Services Assistance Fund? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on account 7320 in the amount of $10,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. And I believe that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work in the community.
Thank you.
We are moving to Public Works, which is account 1035, and this is on page 117. And Mr. Schneider is back with us again tonight. He had so much fun last night, he came back for a second round. So we are on account 1035. Counselor Heed, please.
I will make a motion for the amount of $6,108,332.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Heed and seconded by Franco. Hello?
Good evening. To my left is Stacy Elman Leach. She's the supervisor of Public Works admin, which is the office manager. She helps all of us put the budget together. And of course, to the right, you met Mr. Lund last night. Evan rhymed. If I can, I would like to take a few minutes to just give a real general overview of what the department does. Public Works is really too large to condense to the 3 pages in the budget book. I've asked for more, but I get a look from the finance director. Public Works is tasked with 3 major responsibilities: emergency management and response. Natural disasters as the northeasters, hurricanes, the bomb cyclones now, that's something new. Blizzards are events which the department must plan and respond to. We may not be the first responder, but we're the last responder to leave. These events may last for hours or days for other people, but for Public Works, it is measured, especially for hurricanes, in months and sometimes years. We've just closed out a Superstorm Sandy grant. Just closed it out. We finished the work. We are the lead department in managing the FEMA reimbursement reporting. Even though there is an emergency management director, most of FEMA's funds into the town are for damage and debris removal. We coordinate that through all of our staff here. That's Parks Maintenance, the Board of Ed. We have personnel that are trained to do the reporting and move those numbers up through the chain of command. We're the builders of new and renovators of the existing infrastructure, from schools to sewers. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we built sewers, miles of sewers, wastewater treatment plants, pump stations. Now, for the last couple of years, we're into the school building process, a $91 million and now $184 million bond referendum. The department either does the design itself for the smaller projects with the in-house staff or manages other consultants and engineers on that process. And we also maintain the infrastructure. That includes park structures and all the general fund structures. It does not include Board of Ed, although we do, in some instances, supply the support. The department goals are to have a good transportation system, which means good traffic enforcement, pavement repairs, and removal of snow. We have 95 miles of roads, we've heard that before. About 3,500 street and traffic signs that we have to take care of. Only 4 traffic signals were lucky there. Good environmental stewardship is another goal, not only in permitting, but how we operate. We have 11 major categories of environmental permits for all town operations, which involves 125 specific reporting requirements. That's yearly. Citizens' concerns, we handle those at the department. And those are average about 400 a year. These are the ones that aren't just ones that transfer station, but that's not a citizen's concern. The ones that we call a citizen concern, they need to be researched, investigated, and a course of action either taken. So there's not a simple answer. Even though the course of action may lead to a no, we cannot do that, or no, that's not our responsibility, it is something that takes time to research. And over the years, we had roughly 2 personnel do this. Due to staff reductions, we're down to 1 doing this. Of course, we clean and maintain all the public facilities and all the vacant buildings that are either come from the Board of Ed or other operations that are no longer needed. Accountability of funds, we do over 500 purchase requests a year. Our budget is $15.5 million. We're one of the largest departments that generates that type of volume. We do provide cost-effective service delivery, either by in-house or we contract out. It's about 45% of our current operations budget, just the operations side, not personnel, is for contracted services. We don't clean our own buildings, that's contracted out. We don't replace the fleet people don't replace the windshields. Those are contracted out, items contracted out. Break down barriers between divisions. I do not tolerate that. It's not my job. We have several divisions, but we all work together. We all have resources that we share amongst ourselves and with other departments. Balance the workload throughout the year. Just because we plow snow in winter doesn't mean that those forces don't do something in the summer. We pave in the summer, they do construction work in the winter. there really is no downtime. We're out there in the rain, snow, sleet, or hail, in most cases, doing work. You see our crews maintaining catch basins and other structures in the winter. The amount appropriated is for what we have now. Funds for new construction, major replacements of equipment, and upgrades were shifted years ago to the capital improvement program, so that's what we have. Although Public Works is not staffed 24/7, we must respond 24/7. So when the call goes in the middle of the night, weekends or holidays, either for wastewater, the crews respond. For highway, we respond. Buildings, they respond. And if I could just briefly go through the 4 quick functions that we have right here, maybe to set the stage. 1035, which is our Public Works General Fund account. I look at some of the budget indicators. In FYE 08, the Public Works budget was 6.7% of the adopted general fund budget. In FYE 20, it stands at 4.7%. From a high of $7.7 million in FYE 09 to the current proposed budget of 6.1, there has been a reduction of $1.6 million. And the general line items, which is our maintenance and repair effort, we're close to $1 million in that period of time, less funds to maintain the structures. And there's another thing I looked at is were the funds that we were asking for and that we were allowed to have appropriated, how did we spend? What did we do? So between 10 years, 2008 and 18, the adopted budget for the entire function was $72,536,000. $131,812 was returned to the general fund. So that's less than 0.2%. So were we asking for more than we needed? The answer was no. We spent responsibly everything that was appropriated for us. The general fund public works function consists of 7 cost centers, and they're in the budget book. But what it doesn't explain is that we provide technical support to the planning department and the review of all the site plans and subdivisions, technical support to the traffic authority and placement of signs, design and construction administration to the parks and rec departments, the parks and recreation and other departments for their construction projects that they have. We support the operations of every town of every town department and division by maintaining their facilities and paying for their utilities. The water at Paquonic Plains is paid for by the Public Works Department. Electricity for the basketball court, Public Works Department. We also provide support for the golf course and Water Pollution Control Authority, which is one of our divisions, but it's a separate function. If you look at it, we also provide support services to all the subdivisions in the town. Our transfer station is open to every resident within the town of Groton, whether it be Groton Town, Groton Long Point, City of Groton. Salt storage we provided for Groton Long Point, and of course the Board of Education. In those bad winters that we sometimes have, we also have a snow dump that those 2 communities can come and dump snow. Yes, we must have a snow dump. You just can't dump it in a river or any place. There has to be a permanent snow dump. Leaf and street sweeping disposal, we provide that to all 3 communities. And of course, the public buildings such as library, senior center, and human services that we maintain and I provide the utilities for are open to all the residents. Some of the support to the outside agencies, sometimes very minor, but TVCCA, they have 3 daycare centers on Central Avenue. We, by the contract, but at least must provide some support to them for the outside shell of the building, or the shell of the building. Groton Ambulance, we're working with them for some of their capital projects. And it's been very minor, but we do also own the Noank aquaculture building down in Noank. That is our structure. Luckily, we haven't been able to put much into that. Some of the stressors that you see in this function right here is there is a large unfunded state and federal mandate, stormwater. There's a request here for $82,000 to continue with that unfunded mandate by the state and the federal government. Something of interest is although fees can be collected for some stuff, the Public Works doesn't have access and they don't even show up in our revenue function. We pay for the utilities at Paquonic Plains. There may be some revenues collected from either the Board of Education or other people who play there, but it doesn't show up in any of my accounts as a revenue. Pay for the cleaning and maintaining the HVAC systems at the clubhouse, at the golf course. Rent is received, but remains with the golf course fund if there's any profit. After our programs at the senior center and community center are open to outside agencies, fees are collected, but there's no offset for what I have to provide for heat, electricity, or custodial services. And then we also maintain space for the regional probate court. one of the big issues that we also have throughout the whole region is the removal of dead trees. This year, because of 3 years of droughts, 3 years of droughts, 2 years of gypsy moths, as you see, a lot of the oaks are dying off. The impact has been taken up pretty much so in the town of Groton by the utility companies, because they were in the town doing a lot of their line trimming. So they did take a lot of the dead wood down and the trees down. They are moving out of the area now. They have trimmed out their circuits. Years ago, I was able to have our contractor here 2 days a month for for the 12 months out of the year. Right now, it's for 1 day a month. This equates to about two tree removals per month, or about a half mile of canopy trimming that we have. So we are blowing through that budget fairly regularly, and we're looking at then transferring money within our own line accounts to it. Just real briefly, for the wastewater is another function in our public works, and we'll talk about that in detail later on, but let me just go over it briefly. This is a utility with a sewer authority, five-member authority appointed by the council. The service area includes Navy-based housing and Groton Long Point. City has its own service area. Staff recommends to the authority, whose number is then placed in the department's column. It's a 100% user fee. And for services provided by the town, that's for purchasing, my time, the finance director's time, and town manager's time, this fund contributes over $460,000 to the general fund for services rendered from the tax collector, from the purchasing agent, for all the people that provide support to the function. The solid waste fund, which is 2030, it pays for all the waste delivered to the waste energy facility. It's really a pass-through. What is billed to the town gets billed back out to the haulers. The hauler could be the city of Groton, Groton Long Point, or any private hauler. A fee for recycling will become a reality. The authority that this town is a member of will be covering the cost of recycling for the next fiscal year. So there is nothing in this function of it. The authority has set aside about $144,000 to pay for recycling. It's going to be a reality. That's just life right now. Right now, the authority is covering that with their funds that they have right now. And this also has an unfunded state mandate, which is the Comprehensive Materials Management System, which is, in a way, an unfunded mandate with the state telling everyone to recycle more, throw out less, and if not, we're going to come down and there's some people's opinions they have no enforcement policy, or they have no enforcement authority on making the towns do anything other than asking them to do. The last thing is the fleet fund, which is 60/40. It's town manager has asked the department to revisit the vehicle needs of the entire fleet. The department is working on that analysis now and should be in a draft form in late August of this year. But as you see in the budget right now, the manager has only authorized the replacement of several police vehicles. Some things that we have done internally already is the size of the fleet in 2005 was 218 vehicles, and that includes trailers and anything with a license plate, so it's not just people's staff vehicles. Right now, we're at, right now in 2020, we're at 186. That's a 14% reduction that we have done already over the last 10 years. And before we recommend a replacement, Public Works, we look at repurposing of vehicles. Can a vehicle be that has its useful life here go to someplace else and have more life? Can we replace a component versus the entire vehicle? Why throw out a truck chassis when it's just the body? The dump body is bad. Or can we rebuild it? And that's some of our larger equipment. We have rebuilt them, saving money for the town. So that, in a nutshell, is Public Works.
So I would ask that we keep our questions to account 1035 at this point, because that is the number that's on the floor. Mr. Schneider gave us an overview of all of his accounts, and we'll have to come back to those as we take up each account. But right now, we're on 1035. And are there, Mr. Burt? Councilor Franco.
Hi, welcome. I think you do an awful lot in our town, and I think you do a good job. I have questions regarding the Public Works account 1035 in relation to utility costs at Pleasant Valley School for, as we don't have that in our possession right now, and it's in the budget. Would you like to explain?
We had estimated $7,000 for the utility cost, some water, some electricity, and I believe some fuel oil, just bear it. But what we had proposed in the budget was $7,000 in the utilities.
Okay, thank you. One other, I also noticed that at the police station, you replaced a custodian with a contracted service. Do you think you're saving money by doing that?
Absolutely, because that's a 24/7, so we are providing custodial services Saturday and Sunday and holidays. Saturdays was time and a half, holidays was double time. Here, there is now one person provided by the contractor. So when their person goes on either sick leave or vacation, they have to respond with another employee. And they all have been pre-screened by the police department, and the service levels have not dropped at all. They're happy with the service. They're satisfied with it.
All right, thank you. And I noticed that for snow removal, it was a light year for you, so there was about $120,000 in savings there. And was that used to cover the other increases that?
Yes, yes, it was.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to change the number to $6,101,332.
Could you repeat it, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for 6,101,332.
Is there a second? I'll second for purposes of discussion. So the first amended motion is $6,101,332, moved by Franco, seconded by Granatowski. Counselor Franco, would you like to explain your motion?
We do not have Pleasant Valley in our possession, and we don't expect to have it in the next year, as they expected it to cost them an additional $7,000, and it no longer will for this coming year.
Okay.
Just say I'm in support of that. I was going to bring that up myself.
Okay. I had questions, but I'll defer to Councilors Perry and Obery first.
I notice on page 117, it says financing plan. And there are other sources of money that you have, and so you only need $4,220,566. Pardon me, $4,155,798 from the town. Now, if we approve $6,108,332, does that result in an increase in the mill rate to cover $6 million, or are we going to have an increase in the mill rate to cover the $4,155,000?
It would only include the $4 million. It would only include the $4 million. It doesn't change what's allocated. It won't change the mill rate.
You have to appropriate whatever they want to spend regardless of the source.
Okay, but it won't change the mill rate
No.
beyond the $4 million?
No.
Thank you.
Counselor Obery.
Yeah, I was just wondering, obviously, the snow and ice control was down this year, and going back up on what you're anticipating, but the monies that we didn't spend, was that put into anything else?
Yes, it is. Some of the items that it's put in is the tree removal. We've been having to take down, and these are high-risk trees. These are dead trees that are on the roadway, either can hit the wires, hit a vehicle, fall into a building. So we've been using some of the money there. In some of the public buildings aspect, as you can see, we had one adjusted was 1.1. We're spending 1.25. Some of that had to do with our lightning strike at the police station. Lightning hit it. We had to do some emergency work there to keep everything up and running until the new UPS contract, which we signed a contract that units will be in, but we had to respond to that. So there's a lot of those items there. We do move those things around. Everything is done on a purchase order or purchase request, so it is all recorded. But that's where it was. We had a light winter. We did buy, since we pre-purchased most of our salt. That's being stored in our shed right now, so we have that. But that's what we do. So most of the stuff from the light winter went to the other needs in an apartment, and that was to fix or repair stuff that broke.
Counselor, I'm sorry, you finished?
I was just going to How do we do that? I mean, I understand the logic of it, and I'm glad you're doing it, but do you say, do you get anybody's approval to use something over here versus using it over here? Or is that your discretionary?
I've been here for 35 years, and that's been the case within the function, and then within operating. It's within the function and operating. So if there was extra funds in wastewater, Gary can't go and say, "Hey, wastewater, I need you to patch windows or patch a roof on this building here." That I would have to seek approval to move it. That's council and RTM approval. But within the function itself, within the line items, I don't want to say they're illustrative. We try as much as we can. But it's a guess. It's an estimate that we project. If you look at where we start with the budget, it's a good 12 months before we actually get to start spending the money. But what we do is 100% is that we record where it's spent to, what line item, what cost center and line item, so that we have a good accountability of where the money goes. But the budget's an estimate. It's a lookout, and it's fairly accurate. But there are times when we have a light winter. If we had a heavy winter, we have seen it go the other way, that we pull from our fuel oil accounts. We let our tanks run, not dry, but if we don't get the fuel oil deliveries, we bring them all down to a bare minimum to, again, try to balance that budget. Because the goal is not to ask for a fourth quarter transfer. And I know this year there's a couple of instances we had to, but the goal from the department is stay within budget.
Thank you.
Counselor Heed.
Two questions on page 118, 5104. For the overtime, it's about 6.7% of your total salary, so that looks like it's kind of in line. But what drives the overtime?
That is a snow overtime. What we estimate is we actually take the last 5 years, throw out the high and low. We could take the last 10, but we take the last 5 historically, throw out the high and low, average them, then we know and that's what we program then for overtime money for snow. So that's the main driver. This year we had several more instances of trees coming down in the middle of the night. Police do call us, and then we respond to pull the trees off the road. We do a very bare minimum. We don't cut them all up. We just make sure they're off the travel way and we pick them up at the next workday. But the driver for that estimate is snow.
All right, in the second question, 5290, professional technical SE, whatever that is. Services. Okay, 2018 was 552, 2019 estimate is 651, that's up $100,000. And then the request for this year, or the manager's number rather, is 726, so that's another 75.
Okay, that's the professional and technical services for, as you can see in column B, which was the adjusted, I'm gonna get my numbers right here, to the estimate, which was C. That was that lightning strike at the police station where we brought an electrical engineer in and we brought other service people in, so that's where we charged that. Then the other higher end part of that then was the custodial services, again, not for a full year. If you look for the 5290, we charge all of our custodial services there, so that shows the contract going up for the custodian at the police station versus a personnel that would show up in the 5101. So the custodial increased by $54,000, I do believe, for the contract for the police station. So that's what that is. So that right now we're accounting for the custodial work in total for a total year in that number, 5290.
That also includes the MS4, 81,000 for the new year. So brand new is that MS4 requirement for 81,000.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I had a question on 115 under public buildings. You say you have you have maintenance, repair, and custodial services for over 39 town-owned buildings and structures. So can you please tell me what's included there? Are pump stations included, or what kinds of buildings? It seems like a high number.
Okay, we can start with our 24/7 building, which is the police station, library, all the main buildings here. Then we go down to all the park structures. We have the 20 bay, all the park structures that we have, which is Sutton Park. We have the gazebo, and think there's one structure down there in the gazebo. I don't know if you have the list. And the operations buildings. For Public Works back here, we have the salt shed, of course, the 20-bay garage, the barn that holds the maintenance people.
You don't have to read them all, I just,
It's some of the better ones. Jabez Smith House. The salt sheds, the annex, the transfer station buildings. We have 3 buildings up there. Farquhar Park Pump House. Say that
so it is
fast 5
some
times.
pump stations.
There's things, so some
Okay.
small ones, some large ones. We actually have a shed out at the Bailey Hill Water Tower that the police had their radio repeaters in
Thank
that we
you.
have to maintain.
And then the other question I had was under your financing plan. We're getting 1.2 million under a municipal project grant. Just, can you give me some detail? What is that?
If I could ask Cindy, because
Page 117, financing plan, 1.2 million in a municipal project grant. I mean, I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I was just curious what it was.
That's,
I'm sorry.
Right. It's been pretty steady over
it's a
the course
grant
of
that's
years.
given to the state that we can use for snow and ice control, roads and bridges and streets. And you can use it for other things if you sign a waiver. But it has been pretty regular that we've gotten that for the last few years. It's offered to almost all municipalities.
So it's a state grant that we can use for anything public works related.
Yeah, public works related projects such as roads and streets, snow and ice control, and it can also be used for administration. It's pretty broad, pretty general.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one other item under the employees on page 119, the sustainability project manager, I believe, is Mr. Norris, correct?
Correct.
He is doing most of his work at this point for the Board of Ed, well, for us,
Correct.
as we build the schools.
Correct.
Does any of the payment for his salary come out of any of the Board of Ed money or the school grant money?
It comes out of a bond. If you go to page 118 and you go to 119 salary reimbursement, there's a minus there. So we account for the person on page 118, we take his salary away on, 119, we take his salary away, which is charged to the bond on 118.
Okay, so then the sustainability project manager's salary is shown, reimbursement is shown on 5119.
Correct. And that's his
So-
entire salary.
How long has he been doing the school work and
About a
not
year.
sustainability work?
About a year and a half. Whenever the project was going to bond referendum, after the bond referendum, the first bond referendum was approved, is when we started transferring them over. Before then, it was charged to Public Works.
Okay, so once the schools are built, will he then go back to doing sustainability work?
Correct.
Can you give us some idea of the kinds of things that will entail? Or what did he do before the schools?
Streetlights. He worked extensively on getting the LED streetlights involved. He worked extensively, and we weren't successful on trying to get a vendor to come in to do photovoltaics, a solar field on our landfill. We were number 2 in the first round. Number 2 gets you nothing. Number 1 got the project and the grant. He was working with Groton Utilities on some of the other energy on this building and other buildings, getting the high-efficiency lighting, although this building doesn't have LED lighting, the other buildings did, so he's working with the grants with that. So it'd be going back onto the hard energy stuff,
Okay.
the sustainability of those items, because that's where you get your dollars from. You know, first, that's, I would call it low-hanging fruit. That would be the thing. We have looked at several things on fuel cell that hasn't really gone away. He did have talks with the gas company, Eversource, on doing that in several locations, but we just didn't have the massive buildings or a project that we could put together. So once he starts winding down on that, then you'll start back up again. The funds come over. We don't charge it where we're not supposed to. Then it'll come back over to doing those items and anything else that is sustainable, from budgeting, buying vehicles, EV vehicles, all of that type of stuff. He was also the sponsor for the intern that we had last year that made a presentation to the council. So he was the mentor there, working on greenhouse gas reporting and that.
So then, once his work on the school projects is done, then that reimbursement will not be there, so your budget
Right.
is going to go up by the $100,000.
Correct.
Okay. We have ONG and we have Arcadis.
Right.
Do we need to have Mr. Norris's time spent on that? Or could we shift him back to doing more sustainability things?
There may be a point in time when the construction is actually starting. What ONG is our construction manager at risk, so he gets the plans. Once we are signing the contract, and he's going to build something. Well, it's going through our local permitting process. Rick was instrumental in working with planning, going through getting the site plans approved, the environmental permits, FAA, working through that. So one is the local permits we have, and since we're building 3 buildings, one of them is in the city of Groton, so he's working with the city fire marshal. Of course, we work with the local one here at Pequannock Bridge. So he's kind of the guide, knowing who to talk to, not how to talk to them, but who to talk to and push it through, because ONG and Arcadis really don't know that. They need someone to come to ask a question, someone to ask advice, and someone to actually move things along. Sometimes I don't say it's a roadblock, but sometimes you just need a staff person to do that. He also supports the Permanent School Building Committee, which is still in the process of doing they do good work, but major work on the elementaries, which is the finishes, doesn't meet the ed specification. So he's working with those people, with the committee on that, staffing that committee, so we meet all the deadlines. We do have tight deadlines here. That middle school will be substantially complete June of 2020. It's next year. And the elementaries are supposed to be June of 2021, which is the 2 new ones on the site. So it's moving through approving the payments too, which then go down to finance, making sure we have all the backup in that. We do have people, but there is that one support, the one person that moves the project forward. On our first round of schools, we had the same support from Rick, and it worked really well. Our audits were clean, and clean and quick from the state. And that's what we're doing.
Okay. I look forward to having someone focused on sustainability again, though. But I appreciate that we can get the schools done efficiently and correctly, so that's great. Any other counselors have questions on 1035? Okay, seeing none. We have the main motion and we have a first amended figure on the floor. The first amended figure is Councilor Franco's motion. It is in the amount of $6,101,332. That's what we will be voting first, and that takes out the money for Pleasant Valley, the $7,000 for Pleasant Valley. Is everyone prepared to vote? All those in favor of the first amended motion of $6,101,332, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? So 8 in favor, 1 opposed, Schmidt, 0 abstentions. That motion passes. All right, we are on to sewer operating fund on page 122. Let's see who is the last one. So this is Councilor Aubry on page 122, account 2020 sewer operating fund.
Okay, for the sewer operating account, I will move a figure of $6,539,062.
Second.
539,062, moved by Aubry, seconded by Atwater. Mr. Schneider.
So this account, of course, is...
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lund.
No problem. So, of course, this account is user fee based. It is for the operation and maintenance of the town of Groton's water pollution control facility. Briefly, it's a smaller budget than last year because we need to get ahead of some of our designs in our capital program. So our capital program was lighter, as we talked about last night, with design services. And in the interim, we will be completing some of the other items that we've been working on over the last couple of years, and then moving forward next year with the results of our designs and estimates back to a typical budget. Over the course of last year, we actually were up on the amount of treated water, so we were 1.1 billion gallons for the year, which is quite above our normal. It was a wet year last year. Some of that additional flow can be attributed to an older wastewater collection system, so leaky pipes where the water comes in, something that we are on our list of things to address through our CIPs and our regular operating days. We've made some changes to operations mentioned briefly last night, which are making us more efficient at the plant. And I guess I'll open it up to questions.
Chris?
Yeah.
The number that was moved is 518 plan. We actually moved the number of the cost centers, total cost centers of the 6.2 million.
So if we could have the motion and the second withdrawn, please?
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, very good, thank you. So the motion that was placed on the floor is withdrawn, as well as the second. Would you move then, please, the total appropriation,
Okay.
which is the 6217550?
6,217,550.
Second.
Moved by Aubrey, seconded by Atwater. Okay, questions for Mr. Lund on the sewer operating fund? Counselor Aubrey.
This is not my forte at all, so this might be a question that, is inappropriate, but does the sewer use that we collect come into this at all?
Yes, this is the basis of our funding is sewer user fees. The operation and maintenance of the plant and the system are sewer user fee based, so we're an independent enterprise fund, so we don't use tax dollars for that portion of maintenance of the system, operation of the system.
So is this I'm being educated here. Okay. So the sewer use actually is paying this account.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Are there, Counselor Heed?
So the 5101 regular full-time pay is going up 5.2%, is that correct?
I believe that's the correct percentage.
And those, I assume, are salary, or rather, negotiations?
The vast majority of the staff at the plant are under a contract bargaining agreement, except for 3 individuals, myself, the operations supervisor, and the facilities and maintenance supervisor. The 3 of us are non-union employees. The biggest change in those, probably which you may be interested in, is the operations supervisor position, which that is our chief operator as well. So the chief operator is the licensed operator for the plant, and our plant is considered a Class 4 plant, which is the highest level of technology in the state. It requires a licensed Class 4 chief operator via the permit, and of course DEEP. What is unique about the Class 4 is it's difficult to get the certification. It takes a number of years of experience. You have to pass tests, have educational background as well. You're also, as the chief operator, liable for the plant's operation. So unlike certain laws, there are environmental laws that actually make the individual in charge responsible. So there's an added level of responsibility and accountability for that individual. They are in great demand throughout the state. In the 5 years that I've been here, we've gone through 3 of them. 1 left for another job with better pay. 1 didn't work out. And Mr. Clark has been with us for 2.5 years now. doing a great job. But every time there's an opening, and there was one locally, it's almost the pirates putting on their patches and their hats and going off trying to steal them from each other because they are in such high demand. And just for comparative purposes, similar chief operators at other plants, their salary range I saw today for a number of the actual openings today were from 105 to 125. So I think we're actually very competitive in that position.
Mr. Burt?
Just a reminder that the council was briefed on this in advance and had authorized that position change in salary. It's been a while now. It's been probably
Since
6 months at
October.
least, yeah, or October, yeah.
I received a question from an RTM member regarding the increase in the rates. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to run it by you, and then you could correct me if I'm wrong. I understand the rates are going up this year. However, there was a decrease of 8.8% in your budget. So the question was, if there's a decrease in the budget, how do you justify a rate increase? And when I look on page 125, there's a paragraph there devoted to sewer use charges. And first of all, it says that the Water Pollution Control Authority meets and they set the rates. There's a line that says, this raise increase will be used to increase the operating fund balance in anticipation of increasing CIP costs related to updating and rehabilitating electrical and mechanical systems
That's
at the end of their service life. So is that the justification for the rate increase?
Yes, that's still the justification. Now I can expound
Please.
more thoroughly on the concept. So when I was putting the budget together this year, I figured this was going to be somewhat contentious to ask for a raise increase when actually asking for less money up front. And I have a 10-point that I went through in doing this, and I may not go through all of them, but bear with me, and you can shut me off when you get tired of listening to me. So the things that have changed, I've been here for 5 years, and I think many of you may have seen the rate history for the last 10 years or so, and as I mentioned last night, there are a number of years in there when it stayed 0% increase. And certainly, if you look over that entire history of those 12 years, the total increase was 41%, which breaks down to about 3% a year. If you look industry-wide, the American Water Works Association published data that shows that wastewater rates annualized increase for the same period is about 6.1%. The Department of Energy posted their information similar period of time at 4.1%. So we're coming in over the same time period around 3%. So we're actually behind the curve there. I think we were underfunded when I got here as well, and where that showed up was not necessarily in the daily operations. I think the plant was very well run and very professionally run, but I believe the capital programs were lacking, and we need to get back on that. If you were to look at just general engineering requirements or expectations or rules of thumb for funding maintenance, it recommends 3 to 5% of the total capital value of your plant. Ours being from $150 to $200 million. I've never actually added all the numbers up, but if we use the low end and we use the low end of the recommendation, we should be spending by that account $4.5 million a year on maintenance. We're doing about 3 when you look at the budget and just cut it in half for operations, half for maintenance and repair. So we're still lagging in the capital improvement by about $1.5 million. In the past, that wouldn't have shown up in the budget because there was a lot of money in the Clean Water Fund. I think Gary could tell you from his experiences that the state used to offer a lot of money. The plants were all built with clean water funds almost entirely. Communities didn't have to go put money up. As that money decreased, it would be matches, and now it's based on a scoring system where we put in our list of projects every year, and they're provided a score based on priority, size of community, size of the plant. Last 5 years I've been here that we put in there, we've wound up somewhere about number 60 through number 80 on the list of projects, and numbers 1 through 5 typically are all that are getting funded. So those are big projects. Another interesting phenomenon we're starting to see, and it's the same thing that utilities and water companies are seeing, is that less water is being consumed. And if we're consumption-based, as we are with commercial accounts, those numbers are starting to fall. So I think next year, actually, I'm going to have to rebuild the rate model to take into account a lower expectation for the actual consumptions for each year. New challenges, you've heard me talk about wipes before and things getting flushed that will go down the drain but should not. They're always a challenge. Increasing fats, oils, and grease going down the drains, so we try to be very proactive in inspecting in those areas with those problems. And in the future, we're going to see additional constraints for new constituents of concern. Right now, there are very few places in the country that do anything with pharmaceuticals in the waste stream. I think we're going to see that in the future, as well as heavy metals is what the next talk. So it's getting more difficult. The permit now is more stringent. And of course, the last thing I'd say is our cost of noncompliance is very high. Whether you want to consider it a fine for not doing our job or just the fact if a pipe breaks in the middle of the summer and it goes into any of the local bathing areas, that's a significant economic impact. So that's the reason behind where we are with the rates, and those are the factors that I've been taking into account each year as I do those.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Are there any other questions on account 2020? Councilor Franco.
So you have in your fund balance for 2019 expenditures is 36.29. Is that what you're saying?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
So it says the fund balance as a percentage of 2009 expenditures is 36.29. Is that when you compare that to other towns, is that typical? I'm sorry, it's on page 125 on the bottom.
I couldn't tell you actually how that compares to other
Mr. Schneider can.
communities.
Okay,
Yeah, but the answer is I really don't know how that compares to other communities.
other communities. I'm told I can't spend this money. Bottom line is we get a fund balance sheet, a fund sewer operating balance sheet from the finance department. And there's certain reserves, so we may have 3 million, 2 million, whatever is in reserves, but we need to have
90 days operating expenses.
a 60-day reserve operating expenses, so it's $1.135 million, and so the bottom line is that we have reserves, and that's from the auditors who'd like to see that amount of money. There was some unreserved fund balance, there's net of operations, total funds, so we come up with a list of, not a list of items, but it's all done in accounting-wise, and that's what we have. So bottom line is the accountants, that was a long story, the accountants like to see a 60-day reserve that hasn't been encumbered to anything for the operation. In case something goes wrong, you have cash at hand to work with something.
Okay.
So it's frozen.
So let me just ask another question. So I believe it was, I can't remember the time period, but they had a Fatberg that was in
Yes.
the newspaper, and
Yes.
so that was what this department's also taking care of things of that nature.
Yes.
That rise up, and that was quite a big issue at the time,
It
wasn't
did
it?
indeed rise up, yes.
So, and how do things like that affect your budget? Is that something you don't plan on?
So
doing?
we actually have in our overtime line item funding for unplanned emergencies. And that's where it shows up in that case, because fortunately that was only a labor issue. There was not damage to the equipment, so we just had to get in there and muck it out with shovels and everything. So we had a similar incident 2 Fridays ago now. If you happen to be driving down 215 that Friday night, you may have seen we were busy out in the street from 10 a.m. Friday until 5 a.m. the following morning because we had a pipe crack inside the pump station. So we had to mobilize emergency pumps and piping and block off parts of the road. We had pretty much our entire staff out there because it was a pretty extensive repair and cleanup. So that's where those types of issues show up right now, and the extra time spent fixing them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Atwater.
Just a question, you occasionally hear of a community having maxing out their system or whatever. Where do we stand as far as capacity is concerned?
So we are fortunate that we have plenty of additional capacity, and we've actually tried to talk to some of our communities around us to see if they'd like to
take advantage
contract
of it?
with us.
Okay.
So,
Just for clarification then, Director Landry, the state statute requires a 60-day reserve.
Yeah, that's part of our debt policy here.
The town's debt
Right, the
policy
tech- right, the
requires a
fi-
60-day.
The fiscal and the debt policy, yes, we have, prefer to have a 60-day reserve for all of the.
And what is that dollar amount? What does 60-day reserve equal? Is that the figure on 125?
No, that was,
the 1/6 of the operating, so about $1 million, 1.1 million. right?
Yeah, it's about 1.1 million, $1.2 million.
yep.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? Counselor Schmidt, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just
Anyone else?
raising my hand.
Okay. I didn't want to miss you.
I was gonna scratch my head.
All right, if there are no other questions, then we will vote on account 2020 in the amount of $6,217,550. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. I'm sorry, were you abstaining?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, take that back. So
It's okay.
8 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Aubrey?
Right.
Okay, 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstain. Aubrey. All right, solid waste fund. This is on page 127, please. This is account 2030, solid waste. Counselor Atwater.
I move for solid waste account 2030 in the Public Works, the amount of $1,736,585.
Second.
Moved by Atwater and seconded by Schmidt. Are we back to Mr. Schneider for this one?
Yes.
We're on 127?
As I stated before, is that this fund has been set up over the years when we had actually operated sanitary landfills. This also paid for the operation of those facilities. Right now, in general, this pays for the bill charged for burning the waste. And right now, the waste is taken to the Covanta plant, who operates the plant on Route 12 in Preston. So what this does is that the authority bills, the waste goes to Preston, it gets charged to Groton, the hauler up there by permit declares it's Groton waste, it gets billed to Groton, Groton pays the authority at $58 a ton, and then we back bill the hauler. The hauler could be the city of Groton, or the contractor that Groton Long Point has, or a private contractor, the Mystic Fire District, the Navy. We have several accounts out there, so we then back bill the people who actually deliver the waste there. There's a little bit for an audit, money for audits that is charged to this. But the biggest thing this year is funds to try to sort through the Connecticut's called Comprehensive Materials Management Strategy. This is a DEP unfunded mandate, those are my words, a plan that focuses on meeting a goal of a 60% diversion of solid waste from disposal by the year 2024. According to the plan, this diversion will require, significant steps by all the towns to improve recycling collection systems, reductions in waste generation by both compliance and existing statutory requirements. So what the DEP has notified the towns, or said to the towns that we have to come up with a plan. Every town needs to come up to a plan to reduce the MSW that is generated and disposed of by the towns by at least 10% from the 2014 baseline. And to us, that's about, I do believe, about 6,000 tons, if my numbers are right. Groton's just a little bit different. I'm asking for some funds to sort through this. Groton is not just a little bit different, we are different. We don't know in Groton, get to my crib sheet here, how we can even do this. The state says it's the municipality. I contacted the state, they said that's the town of Groton. But the state has given the Knowing Fire District, the City of Groton, and Groton Long Point Associations the municipal powers to collect garbage. How can we as a town tell somebody else what the state has given powers to what they need to be done? Maybe it's the state needing to tell those political subdivisions that they need to comply. Second, we're host of the subbase. We're the only town in the state of Connecticut that has a federal reservation. We can't tell the feds what to do. We can ask them. We can help them with stuff, but we can't tell them what to do. But are they included in our number count? Deep won't give me an answer. Part of this thing to do is just try to figure out your population and maybe take these political subdivisions out. They can collect garbage by themselves. The census tracts don't match up to any of the fire districts that we have or the subdivisions. So that's kind of hard. So what the $42,000 that I've estimated to be will provide some support working with the town attorney to take a look at several things. We do have we have ordinances that are old. They were enacted in 1998. They probably should be updated. We have a recycling ordinance that's very vague. Maybe that needs to be a little bit better. But when we write these ordinances, we have to make sure that we have the town has the powers or the rights to have this apply over what portion of the town of Groton. There are two regional authorities. One's SCARA and one is the other one of the waste authorities in the western part of the state are even questioning if DEEP has the statutory powers to fine the towns to do this. It's a plan. Nowhere can we find it says that, thou shalt do this. It should be a help. Also, the plan that the state had the DEP, had DEEP doing a large portion of helping out the towns. DEEP will explore opportunities for organics recycling, glass recycling. They haven't done anything. If we wanted to recycle organics in the town of Groton, there's one place in Southington that will take some of it. We know there's a recycling facility in Rhode Island that right now is a composting facility where we take some of our green waste through that does fish byproducts. Nothing else has been permitted in the state of Connecticut. So DEEP hasn't even held up to its own part of the plan, which was to work with stakeholders to develop a system. We'll promote the development of a framework to modify and streamline the creation of other programs out there. They have done nothing. So what we need to decide, what I'd like the funds to do is, one is to update our current ordinance. That's always good to have. The ordinance has established the Groton Regional Resource Recovery Authority, GRRA, which is the town council, but they operate under a separate set of rules. Those ordinances need to be updated. That was 1998. Then the GRRA actually has rules and regulations. Those need to be updated to the current practice right now of what we are doing and what we should be doing in the future. So right now, we know that I can present a part of a plan to DEEP that would satisfy some of their items that they have on what they want us to do. Some of them are just not doable. For the towns to be in compliance, and this, I'm trying to do this real brief, into their plan, we have to either select one, the town can select one of the tier 1 options, what they say, which is a curbside smart program. That's a pay-as-you-throw. Must have a pricing structure, must offer small size option, no larger than 15 to 30 gallons. That's easy to do. But it has to be for the town, for the municipality. And again, it goes back to the definition. What municipality? We are different. I've talked to DEEP. They just go back. It's a circular reasoning with them. That's one of the options in a tier 1. The other is having a curbside residential source-separated food scrap collection program or equivalent. Organics sounds really good. We have to have 70% participation. Where do we take the stuff? We don't know. And again, who? So if you can't comply with those two, we can have other options, which they call tier 2 options. So in tier 1, there's 2 options. You only have to do one. But if you can't do one, you have tier 2 options. You have to do 4 out of the 6. I don't know who came up with 4 out of the 6, not 3 out of 6, 2 out of the 6. It was 4 out of the 6. Again, we can have a transfer station smart program where you pay as you throw at the transfer station, but must reach at least 20% of the population. Groton has tried that already. We had a pay-as-you-throw bag program out at the transfer station. We had one of the highest rates of mixed waste of all the communities. So we tried that once. That'd be for the people who have a subscription. But for us to do it at the transfer station now, I'd have to have more personnel, open up the transfer station more hours, because people just trying to have all the personnel who would use it, all the residents use it, come there Thursdays, Fridays, or Saturdays. It just wouldn't fit. So if that's one of them, we can have a transfer station, residential source-separated food scrap collection program. Same thing, I can collect them, I don't know where to put them. I'll take them to Rhode Island. We have tried it. We and Stonington had an organics pilot program that was collecting food scraps from the schools. Stacy was part of it. The collector, the garbage hauler was collecting this stuff. It was gagging him. In the warm summer, the stuff percolates if you don't collect it quick enough. In the winter, it freezes to the container. You can't get it out. So now, there's ways around it. We tried it, but there's no place to take this stuff. Took it to Rhode Island. So that was the second option. We have a residential curbside textiles collection. The authority is looking into that, of providing that, some sort of providing that. We could maybe do it at our transfer station where there's a textile collection program. So we are looking into that. We can adopt and enforce a what's in, what's out, which is just supposed to include a website updating what's recyclable, what isn't, what should go in the green cart or in the garbage, what shouldn't. The authority is doing that now, and our web pages should be linking into the authority's web page where it has that information. Number 5, 6s, and 7s are all back into the garbage again. They don't want them. The recyclers don't want them. There's no market for them. Implementation or expansion of an extended producer responsibility programs. It must include electronics, paint, and mattresses. At our transfer station, we are doing electronics and mattresses. Paint you can take back to several of the stores, and it was always my thought, why collect something when there's somebody else that will do it for you? But we could add that. That's easy to do. And then, of course, number 6 is other, and it just says, please explain. So what the DEEP has done to the towns is trying to enforce a materials management plan where the state of Connecticut takes care of its own waste within its borders. That sounds good, but they've closed all the landfills. We're slowly moving away from waste energy plants. That's good too. Should use less or generate less, recycle more. But in this day and age, we were taught to recycle everything the last couple of years, and now we're told that most of that stuff that you put in that blue container needs to go into the green container again. So these are some of the issues that we have coming up right now, and that's why this budget up, and the 5290 has about $42,000 in it to sort through some of the issues there that we can present through the town manager to the town council and ordinance, and straighten out, who's supposed to do what, or who's responsible for doing what and where and how. The good part is this function is it pays for our waste disposal, and we have a place to take it. Currently, it's the plant at Covanta, which is on Preston, on Route 12 in Preston. In 2021, this is going to be public knowledge, there will be a press release. I'm not talking out of the box or anything. The authority has signed contracts, long-term contracts with the Lisbon Waste Energy Plant that has substantial savings to the whole communities. That was our first phase, to make sure we had a home for our garbage for the next 10 years. We do. So we are fortunate. Our rate at $58 a ton is the lowest, from what we can determine, is the lowest in the state. The rates for disposal up in the Mid-Con area, the Hartford area, and on the western side are in the 80s or 90s. So we are fortunate to have 2 facilities here and to have an authority with some foresight. We will be looking into either a transportation subsidy or transfer stations in the area here that we can move some of the waste economically. So a person doesn't have to drive all the way up 395. Norwich, that's not that far. Some of our northern tier, North Stonington, that's right next to them. So it's probably quicker going to Lisbon than it is to Preston. But for our southern communities, there may be some issues. So we're looking at either, which is the transportation subsidy, which means we're going to pay you to move the waste up there, the authority, or is there a way we can locate a transfer station down here for some other communities? So that's in the next phase, but we have 2 years to do that. The first thing was to get a place for our waste. So that's the good news. We have very competitive rates, and we have a place to take it for the next 10 years. The issue is going to be the recycling and trying to manage the state's plan that they have for the reduction.
I have questions.
Yes.
I always have questions on garbage. So, when the incinerator was built, we had a contract.
Correct.
For X number of years, and I
Correct.
think 20,000 tons per year.
Correct.
We're out of that contract.
Right, there's no put or pay. That was in 85, so those that was the length of the bonds, those are done.
So, do we currently have a tonnage requirement?
No, we have a municipal services agreement saying that whatever goes up to Preston right now, we call Preston, we're part of the authority, whatever goes up there gets charged $58 a ton. So we have a municipal services agreement with the authority, but there's no minimum put or pay.
No minimum tonnage that we
No
have to
minimum
worry
tonnage.
about meeting?
Nope.
Because if we had that, I was going to be a little concerned if on one hand we have minimum tonnage, but then we have to reduce. That was going to be a big concern.
Correct.
Okay. Have you had, you mentioned that you're concerned because, you mentioned it in your highlights here, that you're concerned because we have 5 areas, 4 independent collection districts. Have you had issues in the past that you feel that those areas are not following what the town was required to do?
No, not really. It would just be in the reporting and then the enforcement. If a subscription, if there's certain areas of town that don't have organized curbside collection, they have curbside collection by a contract. Let's say a contractor is giving you a low rate and he's not putting out the right size recycling container, he's not picking up bi-weekly, he's mixing his loads and all that. How do we find you? How do we find the hauler? Groton Long Point uses a major hauler who does separation. So we don't think we have problems with that, but it's the enforcement of doing 10% less. How do we tell a community or even ourselves to generate less waste by recycling more of what? So it's just that enforcement portion. We don't think anyone is violating. There's several small haulers that we had years back that would mix loads. Those people are gone.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilor Franco.
Well, in the past week or last week, I had gone out to a couple of the fire districts, their meetings, and asked the ones that don't currently collect if they would be interested in doing so, because the rates have increased drastically with private collection. And one district I was not able to contact, one has absolutely no interest, and 2 of them were very receptive, and we're going to look into it. So I know Mystic is a district that does collect. It is not by state statute. They said it's in their bylaws. That's what they told me. And some of the other, are you looking?
It could be that was one that we were looking for. We have the Knowing Fire District. We have that was one we were looking at. Now, Mystic Fire District is in both Stonington and Groton, so they collect differently in Stonington versus Groton.
Right. So when I talked to them, they said it was in their bylaws. And so what I'm trying to do right now is trying to get the other non-collecting areas to try and collect. And I think there's reasons that they should do this and great savings to the citizens in their district. So if they do the collections, if the whole town gets on, each district does the collections, will this also mitigate some of the issues?
I'm stuttering, I know. I really don't know. I know the rates have gone up in the Mystic Fire District because they had a local collector that never raised his fees for so many years. We hear it's, I think, $90 for 3 months. $90 a month? $90 for 3 months.
Right.
And which is about $1 a day, and that's comparable to some of the other districts we see around.
I'll just throw it out there, I called Mystic because that's my district, and I asked what I was paying, and they said it was hard to tell you because it's rolled into the mill rate, but I was told it was $9.79 that they're being charged per dwelling.
And
compared to $30 if you have a private collector. So I think there's substantial savings if the districts
I don't know, and the one is that we don't have the facts. We know that Groton Long Point does collection through a private collector, and they've CWPM, and they have bid it out, so.
Right,
Maybe
they're
that'd be a
bid out.
comparison.
Like we got Mystics Willimantic Waste, and I will tell you that when they come to my house, we've put things in error in there like styrofoam and recyclables, and they will take them out and put them, and take them right out of your recyclable bin, and they will not even collect it. So you definitely learn what you can
Right.
recycle now.
There's a program out by SCARE that we're looking at getting stickers that they can put on recycling containers. You know, this is what's in, what's out.
Mhm.
There's also the website. The garden hose, the plastic garden hose, that's burnable. That's not recyclable. That's another thing that they toss in.
All right, but if the whole town got in collections by district, you're not sure if that would make...
I am not sure. Our current ordinance does allow for the GRRA to have residential curbside collection. In 1998, it was never enacted. Or the direction from the council back in 1998 was no.
All right. Well, I would like to talk to you more about this afterwards, so.
So it sounds like we'd probably want the ordinance updated and have certain
Absolutely.
requirements, so when they go to start collecting, they build that into their contracts.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we're looking at is what we can and can't
Right.
do.
Anyone else? Counselor Heed?
Just a question on when you expect to work on that ordinance.
Once we get funding. It's just, we have the ordinance, we need to have the review, the legal review. So if the funds become available, I'll get with the manager and set up a schedule.
Probably looking at the end of this year, at least.
Counselor Baumgartner?
At least, because it's a complicated issue, maybe longer.
So you brought up different approaches as outlined in Deep's plan. Now, this $42,000 more or less would be, so would it represent a study of sorts?
No, it's something positive will be coming out of it. We'll be taking a look at our current ordinances, and as the manager said, make recommendations back to the council on what the ordinance should be changed, what we have statutory requirements, what we can and can't do. And then from the ordinance, then rules and regulations, which staff can draft with the policy from the...
But the cost is mostly legal.
The cost is mostly legal.
And advertising
Right.
and stuff like that.
So who would be the beneficiary of these funds? Who would be the beneficiary of these funds?
The Public Works Department would take on they'd be the lead on it, working with me, too.
So, I mean, given I think the scale and size of the problem, especially something that is clearly affecting all municipalities, do you think it would potentially behoove the town to look outside of internal resources and look to, perhaps, bid out a study so that, we can look at all different approaches? I know you had outlined quite a few, and I'm only saying that because given you highlighted, the issues they're having in Hartford with Mira, where they're charging, something along the lines of $80 to $90 a ton for trash, and obviously new technology, the fact that at least 30% of our waste is compostable. There are definitely new approaches to, old problems, which is trash. So, I'm wondering if it would kind of behoove the town to maybe look to those outside resources as opposed to, having you expend kind of that internal time focusing on this.
Since me and Councilor Atwater do sit on the Waste Authority is looking at some of the stuff, whether there can be locally a food scrap composting facility, partnering with a local meat producer, I'm trying to be very general, in the area that would collect the scraps and then can use it as a feed. So there are those things like that, and we know Mira, which is the Hartford plant, if you want to call it, is looking at different ways instead of burning it from plasma to recycling to the whole nine yards, gasification of garbage, and nothing has really come through. It's back to it's back to them not knowing what they're doing. It's still incineration out there. So for the larger issues of that, of citing in it, is staying with the authority. I can have the executive director come down here and brief the council on where the authority is looking at and what they're looking at as projects to do, because that's a 11-member town, so there's a block of population and of waste. Most of it has to do with siting, and organics. We looked at sewer sludge composting in this area down here at the wastewater treatment plant, 1985. We're ahead of the game. No, composting sewer sludge. If you compost sewer sludge, you can't use it in the state of Connecticut yet. You can compost it in Massachusetts and bring it over as a soil amendment. We did that for the Groton landfill collection. So there are issues, there are blocks. There's some of it's permitting, some of it the DEEP is saying that they will work with people, but it takes grant funds, it takes funds. The DEEP does have a consultant out there called Zero Waste that they're looking at as a pay-as-you-throw, which is the new SMART program for our communities. The city of New London looked into it, and they're now studying it, and the town of Ledger looked into it, and now they're just not studying it right now because of the concerns of the residents on a disruption of waste disposal and methods of handling. And so, but there are other things out there. So, just a long story short, yes, we need to look at all of this stuff, but we need to have a good basis. I do believe in ordinance, rules, and regulations, and the education of the public in that.
Well, I know to get to that 60%, it's going to take, I think, a lot more work than kind of relying on an individual in town to take
absolutely,
a couple tons of organics.
Again, having the councils, the regional authorities, even getting with the state legislatures and legislators and pushing it that way. It's not on the agenda right now. There is the plastics that are important. That's on their agenda right now, but nothing of these items here.
Mr. Burt?
How many member municipalities are there in Scarra?
There's 11.
So right there, I mean, before you would update the ordinance, you would first, they'd be working on where should we be going. You'd be taking some direction from that larger group, and I assume some of those groups will work together at the state level too. So we wouldn't write the ordinance like day one. You would, I imagine we'll have to wait and let them do some of the work.
Right, and the authority is looking at getting a long-term recycling contract in. It's got to go to a MRF, a sorting facility, so we're working on a long-term contract with that. We are looking into the organics, what I mentioned before, that going to a certain location. Scarra does have a very aggressive education program that they go out to the schools or anybody. They're at the state fairs, the town fairs, county fairs and that. They go out to that. They go to the Mystic Aquarium on their Earth Days there. So we have a good education program, trying to get the kids involved with it and the parents. But it's difficult. And to get that, where they came up with the 65% and diversion, that includes bulky waste too, which is the concrete, the lumber, the shingles, the tires, and all of those items into something, into a recycled product.
Counselor Parker?
No, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Snyder on this particular account? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on solid waste account 2030. All those in favor of $1,736,585, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. And the last account on our list is 6040 on page 131. This is the fleet fund. And I believe we're at Counselor Schmidt.
I move the figure of $871,416 for the fleet fund of 6040.
Second.
Moved by Schmidt and seconded by Parker.
This year, if you go to page 134, the department of the town manager's guidance has recommended just those police vehicles be replaced. These are not all of the vehicles that were on the replacement schedule. That's the entire page. But it's just those vehicles there. They're high mileage vehicles, as you can see in the column that has mileage there, and the date and time that we have there. So these will be bid. These vehicles are bid out, not only the vehicle itself, but what they call the upfitting, which is the decals, the lights, the bars, and everything that goes in the trunk.
So just as a general policy overview, Mr. Burt, you're looking at reducing the number of vehicles that we have in the fleet,
I
correct?
want to take the best shot at it anyhow, yes.
Okay, and the basis for that is comparison to other towns?
Somewhat, though. COG did a study, and we've realized that their numbers aren't really reflective of of what's out there. So that threw things off a little bit. Not everybody was reporting that. Like, we reported a lot of our other equipment, like trailers and things, that not every other municipality was reporting. So we don't have a good basis on that. But we've received questions from council members and others and RTM members about the number of vehicles. So we just want to take a good, thorough look through it and see if we can pare that down.
Councilor Parker?
How many vehicles were updated last year? Because I don't see where that's on the list, unless I missed that on 34. Excuse me? Because I know I've asked before about making sure that we know for, when we get to the budget for each year, we know which ones have been done, and that we're not looking at the same ones. And
I can guarantee that replacing the loader 3 times has not happened under my watch.
I know, but it's nice to see physical evidence.
Okay,
Thank you.
I can provide that by VIN number. So I don't have it here, but I can provide that these are the vehicles by VIN number that we are going to replace. And the current year that we're in was authorized by the town council. This is the VIN number, and this is the deposition of where that vehicle went to.
All right, so you don't have an actual listing of how many were replaced this year yet?
We've purchased everything. We haven't received everything. We purchased everything that was authorized, but that's in general. But you want a little bit more detailed, and the verification would be by VIN number that this vehicle has gone here to there.
Councilor Heed?
Of the vehicles that are being replaced, I mean, if you cite high mileage, there are a couple in the list up above that have higher mileage, like you have 141,000 for an International. You have 123,000 miles on a Ford F-150. But 2 of the cars that we're replacing are right around 100,000 miles, and they're police administration vehicles.
Correct. Those are admin or work trucks, and so we did take a look at everything and then prioritize them. What's more important, a police vehicle or a public works truck with 123,000 miles or 141,000 miles on it? The 141,000 mile International truck could be our grapple truck at that price. So what we did is we took a look at the whole list of vehicles that we wanted, and we were going to recommend like 20 vehicles being replaced and that thing, and then we had to pare them down, and then with the manager's direction, what we took a look at is these are the critical vehicles. Police vehicles take precedence over an operations vehicle.
Well, I mean, police vehicles, yes, but administration vehicles, I'm not sure that those should take priority.
None of these down here. These are all police that we're asking. They're all police patrol vehicles. There's one police admin vehicle that has 105,000 miles. That's to be replaced. But my fleet manager took a look at all these, and this is a recommendation based on use, based on the mechanical history of them. So this is what we select. That's how we made the selection. That's why there's some police vehicles that were programmed to be replaced that we didn't recommend.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions on the fleet fund? Councilor Franco?
So when you say police administration, what type of, are you talking about a secretary or a
No,
police chief? Sergeant?
what we call police admin, that'd be the chief, deputy chief, the lieutenants, shift commanders. They're the admin people.
And they're out on the roads
They're
on shifts?
They are out on the roads. They use them for patrol. The police chief has counts of people on the sides of the roadways. vehicles. So they are used. They're fully operational. They have lights, sirens, or they are outfitted as a police vehicle.
All right, just want to clarify, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Burt, yes.
Just trying to look on a small phone that I'm having trouble seeing, but looking at vehicles from, looking at last year's budget, the current year's budget. Two patrol vehicles were replaced this year. See, F-150 truck for Public Works, was that fully replaced or just repaired? So that was a major repair, wasn't it?
That one was replaced.
It was replaced. Okay, and then
Rusted.
a plow truck was either repaired or replaced, 125,000. And then
that was just the chassis.
okay,
We kept
yeah.
the body.
Yeah, and then the Parks and Rec, they had one purchase to Senior Center for 65,000. Was that van that we got a grant for?
Yeah,
A
and-
bunch of that.
Right.
Right, and then there was a $13,000 repair on the F-350 in Public Works. So that's the list of what was done this year.
Thank you.
So it seems like it was heavy Public Works last year, and this year it's more heavy police. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on account 6040, amount of $871,416. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. At this point, we have considered the accounts for this evening, but we're going to take a 5 to 10 minute recess so Director Landry can get her numbers together for our last couple accounts. So we are in recess for approximately 10 minutes. Thank you. We are out of recess at 8:02, and we have two accounts left. The first is on page 199. This is account 1075, capital reserves contributions. I move $1,646,000.
Second?
Moved by Granatowski, seconded by Parker. And Director Landry compiles these numbers based on the actions we've taken from the capital reserve projects. So this represents a contribution to the capital reserve fund. So it was $1,646,000. Director Landry, did you need to speak to this at all?
Not unless anyone has any questions. We started out with the $2,000,003, and then the additions and reductions from last night would reduce that figure for the amount contributed by the general fund.
Any questions on this account? Seeing none, all those in, I'm sorry, go ahead.
My mouth was full. I'm sorry, she was safe for a moment. Is that mostly because of the, one of the things that we didn't vote on the whole last night?
It's mostly because you had quite a few reductions to the
Okay.
amount of projects. It was a $357,000 reduction to the beginning number.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions on 1075? Seeing none, we'll vote on $1,646,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously. And the last account is on page 202. And again, this is one that Director Landry calculated. This represents the total amount of the CIPs approved. I will move for account 5010, $2,634,000.
Second.
Moved by Granatowski, seconded by Parker.
The
Any,
number again, please?
the number is $2,634,000. And this represents the total amount of CIPs that were approved. Director Landry, any comment on this?
No, again, it's the beginning of the projects plus or minus the adjustments that you made last night.
It's $2,634,000. Okay. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor for 5010, $2,634,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved unanimously.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by, oh, I gotta write it down. Motion to adjourn by Heath, seconded by Parker. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
What's that?
So moved unanimously. We are adjourned at 8:05. Good.